Listen to me right now. You can keep your twin-turbo V8s, and you can keep your high-strung V12s. Nothing on four wheels has ever sounded as completely unhinged as a four-rotor Mazda at 10,000 RPM. But here is the thing that drives me crazy whenever car guys talk about this car at meets. Everyone treats the Mazda 787B like it was some magical cheat code that just blew the doors off the entire field with pure horsepower. They look at that iconic orange and green livery, hear that apocalyptic wail, and assume it just walked away from everyone on the straightaways. That is completely wrong. In 1991, Mazda did something that remains totally unique in the entire history of global motorsport. They won the 24 Hours of Le Mans without a single traditional reciprocating piston under the engine cover. As of 2026, it is still the only non-piston car to ever pull that off. But the real story of how this rotary monster actually won is 10 times crazier than the myth. Let us get some brutal honesty out of the way first. If you lined up the 787 and 787B for a single hot lap against the heavyweights of the World Sportscar Championship, the Mazda was not the fastest machine on the track. Go ahead, get mad in the comments, but the data does not lie. Over a single flying lap, the Mazdas lacked the sheer outright pace of the factory Mercedes-Benz prototypes, the Jaguars and the Porsches. Hell, even back home in the All-Japan Sports Prototype Championship, Nissan and Toyota had them beat for qualifying speed. The 787 chassis was designed to straddle a weird mix of FISA Group C rules and IMSA GTP regulations. It was an underdog on pure velocity, but sprint pace does not win a 24-hour war of attrition. Mazda knew that if they tried to outdrag Mercedes on raw boost, they would blow their project to pieces. Instead, they built an endurance weapon focused on bulletproof mechanical reliability. To understand the 787, you have to look at where it came from. Back in 1988 and 1989, Mazda campaigned the 767 and 767B prototypes. Designer Nigel Stroud took that foundation and evolved it into the 787. Why did they name it the 787 instead of the logical 777? Two reasons. Mazda wanted to signal a massive two-step leap in technological development over the 767, and there were also pronunciation issues with repeating 777s in Japanese. Stroud built the monocoque out of high-strength carbon and Kevlar through advanced composite technology over in the United Kingdom. 2. Initial chassis were finished in 1990 with lightweight carbon fiber body panels. The very first 787 made its race debut in April 1990 at the Inter-Challenge Fuji 1,000-kilometer race, driven by Yoshimi Kajiyama, David Kennedy, and Pierre Dieudonné. Right after Fuji, chassis number 2 was finished, and Mazda Speed packed their bags and headed straight for Europe. Now let us talk about the heart of this beast, because the engine bay is where things get genuinely wild. The old 767 ran a 13J Wankel rotary. For the 787, Mazda scrapped the 13J and built a brand new, custom powerplant from the ground up. The legendary R26B, it shared a similar layout and displacement concept, but the engineering was taken to an insane level. Mazda fitted granular variable intakes, ceramic apex seals for extreme heat resistance, and variable length intake trumpets to dramatically boost engine efficiency. But the craziest part, they put 3 spark plugs per rotor housing instead of the 2 plugs used on the older 13J in unrestricted trim. This 4-rotor masterpiece was capable of putting down a staggering 900 horsepower at an ear-splitting 10,000 RPM redline. And to handle that rotary power delivery, Mazda bolted it to a rugged 5-speed manual gearbox manufactured by Porsche. Nigel Stroud did not just drop in a massive engine and call it a day. The aerodynamics and cooling were completely reworked. On the older 767, the radiators were mounted right beside the cockpit on the sides of the car. That ruined the airflow. For the 787, Stroud ripped those side radiators out and engineered a single, massive cooling radiator directly into the blunt nose of the car. Air entered the front nose, flowed beneath the bodywork, rammed through the radiator core, and vented out right in front of the windshield. They even slapped a gurney flap right at that radiator exit to crank up front-end downforce. Because those side radiators were gone, the doors could be redesigned completely flat and smooth, dramatically cleaning up the topside airflow. Side intakes were repositioned higher up on the rear bodywork, sitting directly above the exhaust cooling vents to keep the brakes and rear engine bay alive. Heading into 1991, Mazda knew they needed more. They took the 787 and developed the upgraded 787B specification. This is where the tech gets seriously advanced. On older setups, the telescopic intake runners moved in step stages for different RPM bands. For the 787B, Mazda created a continuously variable telescopic intake system managed entirely by the car's onboard ECU. That smooth, real-time intake tuning bumped torque output to 608 Newton-meters, or 448 pound-feet, at 6,500 RPM. Next, they reworked the entire suspension geometry so they could squeeze larger wheels under the fenders, and they installed carbon ceramic brakes, making it the first Mazda racing car in history to run carbon ceramics. 3 brand-new 787BS were built for 1991, while the 2 older 1990 chassis were retrofitted with the trick new continuously variable intake setup. This car was turning into an absolute track missile. Here is where tactical genius took over. Mazda brought in racing legend Jackie Ickx as a team advisor to guide their Le Mans campaign. The engineers at Mazda Speed ran the numbers and realized pure top speed on the Mulsanne straight was a fool's errand. Fuel efficiency and cornering speeds were going to decide the race. So what did they do? They voluntarily choked their own engine. They restricted the red line down to 8,500 RPM, capping power at 650 horsepower for maximum fuel range, while running up to 700 horsepower at 9,000 RPM during the race when needed for longevity. They set the car up to carry terrifying speed through the turns instead of chasing straight-line bragging rights. When they showed up to Le Mans in 1991, 2 787BS and 1 older 787 were entered in the C2 class, facing far tighter technical restrictions than the new C1 class cars with their 3.5-liter Formula One-inspired naturally aspirated engine. That calculated gamble paid off in gold. While the high-strung competition broke down, car number 55, driven by Johnny Herbert, Volker Weidler, and Bertrand Gachot, ran like a damn clock for 24 straight hours. The 787B took the overall win at the 1991 24 Hours of Le Mans. It was the first overall victory for a Japanese manufacturer in Le Mans history, and it remained the only one until Toyota finally won in 2018. A third 787B was built later to replace the winning car in active competition before retiring in 1992, but the legend was already cemented. Rule changes immediately phased out rotary engines from top-tier sports prototype racing, freezing the 787B in time as the ultimate rotary screamer. So tell me in the comments, is the 787B the greatest sounding race car of all time, or are you still pretending a turbo V8 sounds better? Drop your take below.